Until now, we have learned how Quintilian educates an orator and how an orator prepares a speech through the 5 canons. Now we come to another very important question. Once a person has become a skilled speaker, where can that skill be used? Should an orator always give the same kind of speech? Should every speech have the same purpose? Quintilian says, different situations require different kinds of speeches. Just as a doctor uses different treatments for different diseases, an orator must use different methods for different occasions. That is exactly what this slide explains. The title says, The Architectural Framework of Oratory. Notice the word architectural. Just as an architect carefully designs every room of a building for a different purpose, Quintilian carefully organizes rhetoric into different categories. This slide has 2 major parts. On the left are the 3 genres of oratory. On the right are the 3 duties of an orator. Together, these form the complete framework of classical rhetoric. Let us begin with the 3 genres. Part 1. The 3 genres of oratory. The word genre simply means type or category. Quintilian explains that every speech belongs mainly to one of 3 categories. These categories were originally explained by Aristotle and later developed by Roman rhetoricians like Cicero and Quintilian. First genre, genus judicial. The first genre is genus judicial, also called forensic oratory. The slide tells us, forensic or courts, past actions. The word forensic comes from the Latin word forum, the place where Roman courts were held. This type of speech is mainly used in courts of law. Its purpose is to decide whether someone is guilty or innocent. Notice another important phrase, past actions. Why past? Because courts examine something that has already happened. For example, did the accused commit the crime? Did the person break the law? Did the witness tell the truth? All these questions concern the past. Imagine a lawyer defending an innocent person. The lawyer presents evidence, examines witnesses, and explains events that have already taken place. This is judicial oratory. Even today, lawyers in court continue to use this type of rhetoric. Second genre, genus deliberativum. Now let us move to the second genre. This is genus deliberativum, or deliberative oratory. The slide says, political assemblies, future policy. The key word here is future. Unlike courts, political debates focus on decisions that have not yet been made. For example, should a country introduce a new education policy? Should taxes be reduced? Should a new law be passed? These questions are about the future. Imagine members of parliament discussing whether a new environmental law should be introduced. Some speakers support it, others oppose it. Each side presents reasons and evidence. This is deliberative rhetoric. The purpose is not to judge the past. The purpose is to influence future decisions. Even election speeches belong largely to this category because politicians are asking people to choose a future course of action. Third genre, genus demonstrativum. The third genre is called genus demonstrativum, also known as epidictic oratory. The slide tells us, ceremonies, present values. The key word here is present. This type of speech is used during public ceremonies. Its purpose is not to argue a legal case or make political decisions. Instead, it praises or blames. Think about occasions such as graduation ceremonies, award functions, memorial speeches, national celebrations, retirement functions. A teacher receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award may be praised for dedication and service. A national leader may be honored for contributions to the country. These speeches celebrate important values like courage, honesty, sacrifice, and patriotism. Therefore, demonstrative oratory focuses on the present and reminds society of its ideals. A simple memory trick. Students often confuse these 3 genres. Here is an easy way to remember them. Judicial looks backward. It asks, what happened? Deliberative looks forward. It asks, what should we do? Demonstrative looks around the present. It asks, what values should we celebrate or criticize today? So remember, past is judicial. Future is deliberative. Present is demonstrative. This sequence is frequently tested in competitive examinations. Part 2. The 3 duties of an orator. Now let us move to the right side of the slide. Knowing where to speak is not enough. An orator must also know what every speech should accomplish. Quintilian explains that every effective speech has 3 duties. First duty, docere. The first duty is docere. The word means to teach or instruct. The slide also mentions logos. Logos means logical reasoning. Every good speech should provide knowledge. Imagine a science teacher explaining gravity. The teacher presents facts, examples, and logical explanations. The audience learns something new. This is docere. Whenever an orator explains ideas clearly and logically, the speech fulfills its first duty. Second duty, movere. The second duty is movere. This means to move the emotions. The slide connects it with pathos. People do not make decisions using logic alone. Emotions also influence human behavior. Imagine a speaker raising awareness about flood victims. The speaker tells the audience about families who lost their homes and children who need food. The audience feels sympathy. Many people decide to donate money. Knowledge informed them. Emotion motivated them to act. That is movere. Quintilian believed that an orator should touch both the mind and the heart. Third duty, delectere. The final duty is delectere. This means to delight or entertain. Notice the slide mentions aesthetic style. This does not mean making jokes all the time. Instead, it means presenting ideas beautifully. Good language keeps the audience interested. Beautiful expressions, quotations, stories, humor used appropriately, and elegant style make learning enjoyable. Imagine 2 history teachers. One reads directly from the textbook. The other explains history through stories, comparisons, and vivid descriptions. Students enjoy the second class much more. Both teachers teach the same content, but the second teacher also delights the audience. That is delectere. Can one speech perform all 3 duties? Yes. In fact, Quintilian believed the best speeches combine all 3. Imagine a teacher explaining the importance of protecting nature. First, the teacher explains scientific facts about climate change. This is docere. Then, the teacher tells the story of families affected by floods. This is movere. Finally, the teacher uses beautiful language, memorable quotations, and interesting examples that keep students engaged. This is delectere. A complete speech educates the mind, touches the heart, and pleases the audience. Now look at the examination trigger box. It mentions 2 important practice exercises, suasoriae and controversia. These are favorite competitive examination questions. Suasoriae were practice speeches based on deliberative oratory. Students imagined advising famous historical figures. For example, should Alexander the Great cross into Asia? Students would argue for or against the decision. These exercises developed future-oriented thinking. Controversia were practice court cases based on judicial oratory. Students defended or prosecuted imaginary legal cases. These exercises trained future lawyers and advocates. Remember the difference. Suasoriae equals advice about future decisions equals deliberative. Controversia equals courtroom arguments equals judicial. The central message of this slide is that Quintilian transformed rhetoric into a complete system. He taught that every orator must first understand what kind of speech is being delivered, judicial, deliberative, or demonstrative. Then, regardless of the genre, every speech should fulfill 3 essential duties. Docere is to teach through reason. Movere to move the audience emotionally. Delectere to delight through graceful and effective expression. When these genres and duties work together, an orator does much more than speak well. According to Quintilian, the orator becomes a teacher of truth, a guide for society, and a responsible leader whose words educate the mind, inspire the heart, and elevate human character. So far, we have learned who the ideal orator is, how an orator is educated, the 5 canons of rhetoric, and the 3 genres of speeches. Now we move from theory to practice. Imagine you are a lawyer standing before a judge. You have all the knowledge. You have prepared your arguments. But one important question remains. In what order should you present your speech? Can you begin by attacking your opponent? Can you jump directly to the conclusion? Can you present evidence before explaining the case? Obviously not. Just as a building is constructed according to a blueprint, a speech must also follow a proper structure. That structure is called partes orationis, which simply means the parts of a speech. This structure was especially important in legal speeches delivered before Roman courts. Quintilian believed that every effective legal speech should contain 6 carefully arranged parts. Let us understand each one step by step. First part, exordium or proemium. The first part is called exordium, also known as proemium. This is the introduction. Notice the explanation on the slide. It says, winning goodwill, or in Latin captatio benevolentii. This is an important examination term. Let us understand it. Imagine you enter a classroom as a new teacher. If you immediately begin shouting at students, they may not listen carefully. Instead, you first greet them politely, introduce yourself, and create a friendly atmosphere. Now the students are ready to listen. Exactly the same idea applies to a speech. The introduction is not only about introducing the topic. It is about gaining the audience's trust. A lawyer may begin respectfully by saying, "Your Honor, today I stand before this court to present the truth with honesty and respect." Such an introduction creates confidence. The audience becomes willing to listen. That is why Quintilian says the first duty of the introduction is to win goodwill. Now look at the exam trigger. It says, proemium refers specifically to the introductory portion designed to win the audience's goodwill. Remember this distinction for competitive examinations. Whenever you hear the word proemium, immediately think, introduction that wins goodwill. Second part, narratio. After introducing the case, the speaker moves to the second part. This is called narratio. The slide defines it as the statement of facts, brief, clear, and plausible. Notice these 3 important qualities. First, brief. Do not waste the audience's time with unnecessary details. Second, clear. The facts should be easy to understand. Third, plausible. The story should sound believable and logical. Imagine a lawyer explaining a road accident. The lawyer should clearly describe where the accident happened, when it happened, who was involved, what evidence exists. Everything should be presented simply. If the audience becomes confused at this stage, the entire case becomes weak. Quintilian believed clarity is one of the greatest strengths of an orator. Third part, propositio or partitio. Now we reach the third part. This is called propositio, or sometimes partitio. The slide explains it as clarification of the dispute and outline of arguments. Think of this as giving the audience a roadmap. Imagine you are about to travel from Chennai to Delhi. Before beginning the journey, you usually look at a map. Similarly, before presenting detailed arguments, the speaker tells the audience exactly what will be discussed. For example, my case rests on 3 important points. Then the speaker briefly lists those 3 points. Now the audience knows what to expect. This creates order and prevents confusion. A good speech always guides the audience step by step. Fourth part, confirmatio, probatio. Now we come to the heart of the speech. This is confirmatio, also called probatio. The slide defines it as presentation of proofs and supporting arguments. This is where the speaker proves the case. Think of this as building a strong wall with solid bricks. Each brick is a piece of evidence. Each piece of evidence makes the argument stronger. A lawyer may present documents, witnesses, scientific reports, legal precedents, logical reasoning. Everything that supports the case belongs here. Imagine you are trying to convince your parents to allow you to join a course. Simply saying, "I want to join," may not convince them. Instead, you present reasons. You explain career opportunities. You show the course syllabus. You discuss future job prospects. Now your argument becomes stronger. That is exactly what confirmatio does. It supports every claim with proof. Fifth part, refutatio. After proving your own case, another important task remains. You must answer the opponent's arguments. This part is called refutatio. The slide defines it as the destruction or rebutting of the opponent's case. Notice something important. Quintilian does not encourage attacking the opponent personally. Instead, he encourages attacking weak arguments. Suppose the opposing lawyer says, "My client was not present at the scene." You may present CCTV footage proving otherwise. Or suppose the opponent's witness gives contradictory statements. You politely point out the inconsistency. This is called refutation. In modern debates also, good speakers do not merely present their own ideas. They also explain why opposing arguments are incorrect. A strong speech must answer both questions. Why is my argument correct? Why is the opposing argument incorrect? That is the purpose of refutatio. Sixth part, peroratio. Finally, we reach the last part. This is called peroratio, or the conclusion. The slide says, the conclusion, heavily utilizing pathos to secure a verdict. Notice the word pathos. Earlier we learned that pathos means emotional appeal. At the conclusion, the speaker summarizes the strongest arguments. But Quintilian also says this is the moment to touch the audience's emotions. Imagine a lawyer defending an innocent person. After presenting all the evidence, the lawyer concludes by saying, "Your Honor, justice is not only about following the law. It is about protecting an innocent life. I request this court to deliver a fair judgment." This conclusion combines logic with emotion. It leaves a lasting impression. Think about a movie. The ending is often the part we remember most. Similarly, the conclusion of a speech should remain in the audience's mind long after the speech ends. That is why peroratio is so important. Understanding the complete structure. Now let us look at all 6 parts together. Imagine you are assembling a puzzle. Each piece has its own place. The speech begins with a respectful introduction. Then the facts are explained. Next, the main issue is clearly outlined. After that, evidence is presented. Then the opponent's arguments are answered. Finally, the speech ends with a memorable conclusion. If any one of these parts is missing, the speech becomes incomplete. A simple memory trick. For examinations, remember the sequence like the journey of a court case. Exordium is win goodwill. Narratio is tell the facts. Propositio is state the issue and plan. Confirmatio is present your evidence. Refutatio is defeat the opponent's arguments. Peroratio is conclude with emotion and persuasion. Think of it as welcome story plan proof reply conclusion. This simple sequence makes the 6 parts easy to remember. Conclusion. The central message of this slide is that Quintilian believed an effective legal speech is never random. It follows a carefully organized 6-part structure that guides the audience from introduction to conclusion in a logical and persuasive manner. By beginning with goodwill, presenting facts clearly, organizing arguments, supporting them with evidence, answering opposing views, and ending with an emotionally powerful conclusion, the orator maximizes both clarity and persuasion. This structured model of partes orationis became one of the most influential frameworks in classical rhetoric and continues to influence courtroom advocacy, academic presentations, debates, and public speaking even today. In the previous slide, we learned how Quintilian organized a legal speech into 6 parts. Now, another important question arises. Before a lawyer begins speaking, before presenting evidence, and even before writing the speech, one important question must be answered. What exactly is the disagreement? Many court cases become confusing because people argue about different issues. One lawyer may be arguing about facts. Another may be arguing about the meaning of the law. Someone else may be discussing whether the court even has the authority to hear the case. If everyone argues about different questions, the discussion becomes confused. Quintilian says that before arguing, an orator must first identify the real point of dispute. This method is called stasis theory, also known as status theory. The word stasis comes from a Greek word meaning a stopping point or a point where the argument stands. In simple words, stasis theory asks, what is the real issue that needs to be solved? Think of a doctor. When a patient arrives with a fever, the doctor does not immediately give medicine. The doctor first asks questions. What are the symptoms? How long has the fever lasted? What caused it? Only after finding the exact problem does the doctor begin treatment. Similarly, Quintilian says an orator should first diagnose the dispute before trying to solve it. This slide explains 4 important questions. Each question leads to a different kind of legal argument. Let us understand them one by one. First, stasis. Status conjecturalis. Fact or conjecture. Look at the first question on the slide. It asks, did the act happen? This is called status conjecturalis. The word conjecture simply means deciding whether something actually happened. At this stage, the question is not whether the act was legal or illegal. The only question is, did it happen at all? Imagine a robbery takes place. A man is accused. He says, I was not even there. Now the dispute is about facts. Was he present? Did he commit the crime? Was someone else responsible? The lawyer will use evidence like CCTV footage, fingerprints, witnesses, phone records, DNA reports. Everything focuses on proving whether the event actually occurred. This is the first level of stasis. Without establishing the facts, the court cannot move further. Second stasis, status definitivus. Definition. Now imagine that everyone agrees the act happened. The accused admits, yes, I caused the person's death. Now the first question is already answered. The act happened, but another question immediately arises. What should this act be called? This is the second stage. Status definitivus. The slide gives an excellent example. Murder versus manslaughter. Notice that both involve the death of a person, but legally they are different. Murder usually involves intention. Manslaughter may involve negligence or lack of intention. Therefore, the dispute is no longer about facts. The dispute is about definition. What legal category does this act belong to? Imagine another example. A student copies answers during an examination. Did copying happen? Yes. Now the question becomes, should it be called cheating? Or was it an accidental mistake? The argument has shifted from fact to definition. That is status definitivus. Third stasis, status qualitatis, quality or value. Now let us suppose the court has already agreed that, yes, the act happened. Yes, it is correctly defined. Another question still remains. Was the act justified? This is called status qualitatis. The word quality here means the moral or legal value of the action. Imagine someone breaks a window. Normally this is wrong, but suppose the person broke the window to rescue a child trapped inside a burning house. The act is the same. The window was broken, but the reason changes everything. Now the lawyer argues, my client acted to save a life. Another example, imagine a police officer uses force to stop a terrorist attack. The action may appear violent, but it may be legally justified because it protected innocent people. So this stage asks, was the action fair? Was it necessary? Was it done in self-defense? Were there exceptional circumstances? Notice how the discussion has changed again. Now the court is evaluating the morality and justification of the act. That is status qualitatis. Fourth stasis, status translationis, jurisdiction. Finally, we reach the fourth stage. The slide asks, is this the right court to try it? This is called status translationis. The word jurisdiction simply means legal authority. Sometimes the dispute is not about the crime itself. Instead, the question is, does this court have the authority to hear this case? Imagine a company in one country has a legal dispute with another company in a different country. Should the case be heard in India, or in another country? Or suppose a military officer commits an offense. Should the civilian court hear the case? Or should the military court hear it? The issue now is not guilt or innocence. The issue is jurisdiction. Which court has the legal power to decide? This is the fourth stasis. Understanding the flow of stasis theory. Now let us see the complete sequence. Quintilian wants every lawyer to ask 4 questions in order. First, did it happen? If the answer is yes. Second, what exactly should we call it? If that is answered. Third, was it justified? Finally, Does this court have the authority to decide the case? Notice how logical this process is. Each question builds upon the previous one. If the act never happened, there is no need to define it. If the definition is uncertain, it is difficult to discuss justification. If the court lacks jurisdiction, the case cannot proceed properly. This systematic method prevents confusion and keeps arguments focused. Why is stasis theory important? Stasis theory is not useful only in court. We use it in everyday life. Suppose a teacher says, "Someone damaged the classroom projector." The teacher may ask, "Did anyone actually damage it? If yes, what exactly happened? Was it intentional or accidental? Who should handle the matter, the class teacher or the principal?" Without realizing it, the teacher is following the same logical process. Even modern lawyers, judges, debaters, journalists, and researchers often begin by identifying the exact issue before discussing solutions. That is the lasting importance of stasis theory. Examination focus. Now look at the examination trigger box. It says, stasis theory is the analytical system used to determine the exact core point of dispute in a court case. This is the simplest definition to remember for examinations. If an objective question asks, "What is the purpose of stasis theory?" your answer should be, "It identifies the central issue or exact point of dispute before constructing legal arguments." A simple memory trick. To remember the four stases, think of them as four courtroom questions. Conjecturalis think did it happen? Definitivus think what is it called? Qualitatis think was it justified? Translationis think who has the authority to decide? Or remember the sequences. Fact to definition to justification to jurisdiction. This order is easy to recall in examinations. Conclusion. The central message of this slide is that Quintilian believed effective argument begins not with speaking, but with thinking clearly about the real issue. Before presenting evidence or persuading an audience, the orator must identify whether the dispute concerns facts, legal definition, moral justification, or jurisdiction. By following this systematic method of stasis theory, the orator avoids confusion, focuses on the true point of disagreement, and builds stronger, more logical, and more persuasive arguments. This analytical framework remains influential today in law, debate, critical thinking, academic writing, and problem solving because every successful argument begins by asking the right question.